In the hurry of legal applications, Special Consultant David Weiss' office responded to Hunter Biden's federal firearm charges against him on Tuesday. In court documents, federal prosecutors argued weapon accusations faced by President were discussed by defense claimed a selective and justified prosecution is not part of selective justified prosecution. They said evidence, including presence cocaine residue on pouch, showed there was an illegal firearm at time when he struggled with drug addiction. Because of accusations in this case or the former President Trump instead of defendant's own elections, they were brought despite any external noise made by politicians. In September, Hunter Biden accused by federal grand jury on charges of 3 crimes against a Colt Cobra's illegal acquisition and allegedly, on October 38, 2018, claimed that he was not guilty of 3 charges in .2023. While drug user, federal prosecutors also argued that the deflection agreement, which would be overcome to prosecute for federal weapons accusations if Biden agrees not to use or use of firearms, had never been approved by the U.S.-controlled Freedom and never entered into force. However, Hunter Biden's legal advisor argues that the deflection agreement is legally binding and still valid. With a defense agreement on tax costs, the conditions of a judge and whether the agreement will allow Hunter Biden to avoid future potential charges, federal was solved in court. Hunter Biden's lawyers also leaned over a Second Amendment argument by political opponents of the Supreme Court of Appeals in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association Bruen case.Justice, which required to weigh whether it is consistent with its regulation tradition, led to a new legal test put forward by Clarence Thomas, Biden's advisor. In his dismissal movements, federal prosecutors, as a drug user, blame him with an illegal kept a firearm because it was against the Constitution. He argued that they could not prove that they used drugs to buy firearms. In contrast, private lawyer prosecutors have evidence that government has been engaged in use of drugs while having firearms, and Anglo American law has long given government's ability to restrict access to firearms for a long time a risk for those who will oppose ownership. Federal prosecutors also argued that Hunter Biden's lawyers were not approved by Congress and therefore violated appropriation item after violating allowance of private advisor and financing for investigation. The Ministry of Justice replied prosecutors. The ministry has authority to determine U.S. represent United States in court, and identified Congress allowance covers independent investigation. The ongoing investigation into Hunter Biden, led by Weiss, was spread for 5 years during both Trump and Biden administrations. Weiss was appointed by former President Donald Trump as a U.S. lawyer for Delaware and was elected a special advisor by the chief public prosec.